Hello, my loves. It's Glenda, the Grieving Nomad. As of today, April 26th, 115 days into the year, there have been 81 mass pew-pewings in America. And each time a mass pew-pewing happens, there are discussions about where the perpetrators are coming from as if it's a mystery. But is it really a mystery? Or is it simply YT culture? Europeans across the board, regardless of country, came to the Americas and intentionally infected the natives with diseases. And when they didn't unalive fast enough, they resorted to force to take their land. YT peoples unalived entire tribes across the Americas, eliminating hundreds of millions of people. Those people who committed those atrocities against humanity would be the equivalent of the modern day mass pew-pewers, and those people brought help. They enslaved natives. They imported Africans to enslave. Those people who enslaved people would be the equivalent of the modern day mass pew-pewers, and they too brought help. Those they enslaved, they committed every atrocity known to man against, and actually made up new and unusually brutal, cruel treatments never seen before in any slave culture in the world. They tied slavery to the bloodline of the mother rather than the bloodline of the father, as it traditionally had been around the world, literally enslaving their own children they created through rape. Those people who were enslavers would be the equivalent of the modern day mass pew-pewers, and they brought help. YT people, the vast majority who were not enslavers and were themselves disadvantaged because of the slave trade. Despite having no lot in slavery, they fought a war to keep an entire community of people enslaved, risked their own lives against their own better interests, their own advantages. Those people, they would be the equivalent of the modern day mass pew-pewers, and they too brought help. YT people never accepted the end of slavery, hence the 13th Amendment. Then they made being homeless, unemployed, walking on the sidewalk with YT people, scaring YT women by existing on a myriad of ridiculous laws to further enslave, oppress, and abuse members of the black community. And those people who approved those laws would be the equivalent of the modern day mass pew-pewers, and they brought help. YT lawmakers created hundreds of thousands of laws around the United States to purposely oppress and disadvantage the entire black community, including purposefully undereducating black communities, purposefully removing gainful employment from the black community, purposely flooding the black community with drugs. All of those actions and more are violence. And the vast majority of the laws designed to convey that violence not only are still on the books, others have been rewritten to do the exact same thing. And those people who created those laws would be the equivalent of the modern day mass pew-pewers, and they brought help. YT people planned, organized, and advertised strange fruit events. And the government, knowing it was going to happen, allowed it to happen. They took their entire family, including their little babies, to advertised strange fruit events. They collected souvenirs from the remains of the strange fruit and actually consumed the remains and fed the charred, strange fruit remains to their children. Those sick MFers who did those things would be the equivalent of the modern day mass pew-pewers, and they brought help. YT people are vindictive and jealous of black communities. They violently destroyed over 150 successful black communities, and those they didn't destroy violently, they used the government and eminent domain to destroy successful black communities, to build parks, lakes, dams, government buildings, and highways, all with little to no compensation to the people they took it from. Then threw us in the ghetto and said we didn't know how to manage the resources they took in taxes and never gave back. Those people would be the equivalent of the modern day mass pew-pewers. And they brought help. YT people, specifically FDR and his administration, came to save the country from the Great Depression and purposely excluded black Americans from the New Deal by excluding domestic workers and agricultural workers, the primary employment of black Americans in that time. There was no assistance for 98% of the black Americans during the Great Depression. FDR and the lawmakers who left the majority of the black community to starve as help was provided to the YT community would be the equivalent of the modern day mass pew-pewers, and they brought help. There have been 5 homestead events in the United States since its inception. YT people have been given free of charge 10% of the United States. That's over 1 million acres of land for free. And that's the reason that reparations were supposed to be 40 acres and a mill. And understand, in some instances, YT people received 50 acres in the name of the enslaved by lying and calling the person who was going to work the land for free their family. They brought people from Africa. And if that person died during the voyage, they were allowed to keep that land in that person's name. Blacks, natives, Latinos, because Mexicans were here. We weren't allowed those deals, but YT people were. And the people who did those things, made those laws, they would be the modern day equivalent of the mass pew-pewers. And they too brought help. YT people gathered to scream at and threaten black children who were trying to go to school with their children to get a decent education. YT people cremated their neighbors' homes and businesses. Those people would be the equivalent of modern day mass pew-pewers. And they too brought help. YT people kaboomed churches, homes, businesses of black citizens. They cremated crosses on the lawns of their neighbors, raped black girls and women. YT women lied on black boys and men. And no matter the problem, YT men's only solution is to unalive others. They don't know how to negotiate and talk. And those people would be the equivalent of the modern day mass pew-pewers, and they too brought help. And the list goes on indefinitely. YT people are extremely violent and dangerous, and they always have been. It's nothing new. Violence, rape, and destruction is YT culture. Whether they call it manifest destiny, self-defense, and the violence that they created, they believe it to be justified. The fault of those who disagree with them, and because their belief that others cannot exist without their permission, they have to know what's going on. What's going on? They have to know what's going on. What's going on? I don't understand. Like Ahmaud Arbery. If they don't understand what's going on, they will take a spirit from a person in a heartbeat. They excuse crimes by those who look like them as they destroy others or use their personal fears as excuses for violence they create. Their culture has always been extreme violence, and somehow they have convinced the world that Black Americans are the most violent people on earth, while they manage to convince themselves that they are peaceful and civilized. The wrecking crew of the current administration is there because the vast majority of YT people and those who stand in alliance with them want to openly get back to the good old days where a YT man can publicly take a spirit from a person and not have to face justice. They have always wanted to hurt others, and just as they did on November 5th, they have always voted to hurt themselves and love it, as long as it hurts those that they hate, which seems to be everyone, including those who look just like them. You're sick people. And their issues are not limited to the Black and Native communities. YT Americans have violently attacked every group in the country, including but not limited to Puerto Ricans, Chinese, Mexicans, Japanese, Koreans, Jews, Vietnamese, Irish, Italians, Muslims, Sikhs, and the list goes on and on. They attack everybody. YT Europeans have imported their violence to every continent on the planet. And there is not one people they have encountered that they have not lied to, stolen from, or unalived. In many cases, raped. Those people are the modern day pew-pewers, and they brought help. The people of the Triple K were hoods because they were doctors and pastors and lawyers and judges, politicians, bankers, policemen, businessmen, and blue-collar workers and agricultural workers. They were fathers, uncles, brothers, cousins, neighbors who regularly met together with the primary purpose of oppressing, abusing, tormenting, stealing from, imprisoning, and attempting to subjugate Black citizens. They sat together and made plans for properties they would destroy and people they would unalive. They are the modern day mass pew-pewers, and they always had help. These days, most YT people do their harm through their votes, as they did on November 5th. But sometimes the bloodlust gets so strong, they turn on their own community. Think J3+3. If those people had found anyone, they would have made strange fruit on live TV, and you know they would have. They are the modern day mass pew-pewers, and they brought lots of help. And while the vast majority of the YT community knows how to control themselves and use restraint, the desire to harm others still lives very deeply in the hearts of the vast majority of them. And unfortunately, no matter where they go, their powers that be will order them to use manifest destiny tactics of unaliving, raping, pillaging, and enslaving. And as was proven in 1930s Germany, they will follow orders without question, knowing it's wrong, because deep in their hearts, they want to be violent. That's who they are. When our mass shooters now, our modern day mass shooters go out there, they don't have help. But the reason they don't have help is because others that actually would want to help them don't want to go to jail. Because in times past, it wasn't against the law. But there are a lot of people, they won't say it out loud, but if that mass shooter had said, hey man, come on, go with me and do this, they may not have done it in the white T community, but they definitely would have went to a community of color and did it, because that's what they do. So where do the mass pew-pewers come from? It's natural YT culture to unalive, destroy, and oppress. That is who the vast majority of those people are. Now, are there some that don't actually feel that way? I like to think so. I mean, I know some people that are very kind, thoughtful, generous. But overall, this is what they do. Please like, subscribe, and follow to keep up with my posts. Please share my information. I love you. Peace.